I'm good. I think I can say the one reason it's very nerve-wracking for Brett Brown is because he hasn't experienced it very much in his coaching career until he got to Philadelphia. So he wouldn't have had any experience doing this.
That is true, and this will be his, third time in the opportunity tonight. And is this one more important than either of the previous two?
Well, I think it is in the sense that you need to add pieces that are going to help next year. I mean, they came out of nowhere last year with 2 picks that, couldn't play, and they were 2 lottery picks. You cannot afford to duplicate that same thing this time around. How important is it to get the number 1 overall pick versus 2 or 3? I'm not sure I could tell you that that's the case, because I think very similar to last year, people go 1, 2, 3 with D'Angelo Russell being the least talked about as the number 1 overall, but those 3 guys, Karl Anthony Towns and Okafor, being the 3 that you talk about being 1, 2, 3, and I think somebody, any of them will help your franchise. So, they're weighted to hopefully get the 3rd pick. You can't go any lower than 6, and you could get 2 of those, if not 1, 6, 11, which everybody loves that hashtag.
Yes, they do, and that's a very minimal chance. But, Dee, is it correct that they have a better chance to end up with 2 first-round picks than they do to end up with the number 1 overall pick?
Mathematically, correct, yes. But, again, we're talking, the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all, small percentages, but that is the case. And actually, I like Chad Ford. I love reading his stuff from ESPN, and he did his one before the lottery mock draft where he did the simulator, and the Sixers ended up with the 5th and the 6th pick when he did it.
I actually played that lottery a little while ago and ended up with the 5th and 6th pick as well. And you wonder, would that be something that Sixers fans would be happy with tonight? Are they better off with one of the 1, 2, or 3, or getting 5 and 6?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I immediately put it up on Twitter, and most people responded that as a Sixer fan, they'd be perfectly fine with 5 and 6. And I can see why. If you think about it, I mean, the year that the Sixers had ended up with 6 and 12 with Noel and Michael Carter-Williams, I mean, those are 2 really good players. And so 2 lottery picks is, you're going to help your team.
Sure. Dei Lynam's with us here, CSN Philly, the NBA Draft Lottery tonight. You can hear it right here on 97.3. And, Dee, obviously, the first 2 years, as you mentioned last year, they took 2 guys that didn't play. Do you think now they are looking for immediate help, and that this 3rd year is where we're going to start to see progression in the win column?
Well, I don't think you're going to see a huge jump, because I think you're going to have 2 guys that are added, hopefully 2, at least 1 and a couple second-round picks for sure, that are still very, very young guys. And, it's not, I mean, look around and see the Final 4 teams that are playing. Experience matters, and most of them go out and acquire talent in free agency that make a difference. Now, I mean, I wrote a thing about Golden State. 4 of their starters were their own draft picks, and, of course, it started with Steph Curry, who's a special player. So I get the direction they're going with, but to say that next year is the year that you're going to see a big jump in the win column, I'm not sure that that's the case.
Dee, a lot of people would suggest if you had the number 1 pick that Karl Anthony Towns would be that pick for virtually every team out there, that he has kind of moved ahead of the pack. But would he be a good fit for Philadelphia? We always say best available, just take the most talented guy. Would that be a no-brainer for them?
Well, I think I was looking up, the number of times where you see, I would say that people do feel that's the best player available there at number 1. So I'm going to agree with that part of it. And then the other part is, you saw even last year when people say, the Sixers trying to move up to get that number 1 pick. Cleveland had no interest, really, if we look back at it, in moving that number 1 pick, because everybody knows they'd rather take a shot at the best player there than move down and maybe get another little piece somewhere down the road. So I think you have to take the best player, and then you figure it out somewhere down the road. If you trade somebody or try to see what you have, because, it is still a building year, have all 3 big guys, go ahead and do it, and then, figure it out the following year. But, I mean, I think you do always take the best player available.
You know, a lot of people would look at the three big men then, Nerlens, Joel, and then if you added a guy like Towns or even Okafor, if you ended up with the second pick, if he would be in the mix, would that suggest that maybe one of the big guys would be moved, or do you think they would try to go with all three of those guys?
Well, I mean, I could see you saying, let's try to go for the very reason I just said, try all three, divide up those minutes in the front court for, you know, in the immediate future, unless you have somebody who's knocking on your door that offers you something that you wanted. I don't think you move the pick before you take the best player available. I guess that's the way I was trying to, phrase that. And then, you know, do you move somebody like Cleveland did, a Wiggins last year before they ever saw him play? It's a possibility, but it'd have to be something that you are so sure is something you want. And in terms of it being a key for, you know, the immediate future of a free agent or a guy that you're going to have to pay a lot of money, I don't think the whole program is at that point yet where you would do that.
You know, Dei Lynam's with us here, CSN Philly. The Sixers have the NBA Draft Lottery tonight. They can end up with 1, 2, or 3 first-round choices in this draft tonight, or in the Draft Lottery tonight. We'll see how that goes for them. You know, you mentioned the Golden State situation, and is this going to be something, in your opinion, where this thing just 1 year explodes and goes from a, say, 30-win team to, boom, they've matured into a 50 to 60 win team in like 1 year's time? Or do you think it'll be a more gradual 30, 40, 45? You know what I mean? You know, do you think it'll just 1 year come together and you're going to see something special?
I don't think it happens like that, to be honest with you. For instance, I'll continue with my Golden State analogy, who, by the way, they did go out and get Bogut. They did get an Andre Iguodala. They do have people that surround, you know, those 4 picks, which were Steph, Clay, Draymond Green, and Harrison Barnes. So, but they had 3 years when Steph was a rookie. His first 3 years, they were below mediocre, and then went 47, 51, and obviously this year 67 is monster. So I think when you say, you know, we're talking about a team that had 18 wins last year. I think the jump to 30 is even something, you know, really significant when you have a roster that is 25 and under, probably again. So I think like 25 would be a good jump. Then what do you have the following year? Then the following year, you know, are you active at all in free agency so that you could, you know, eventually get into the 40s at some point? But I think it's more, you know, gradual than it is. It's gradual at this point, and then when you get to 40-something, you could make a big jump.
In that article, you write that the Sixers must identify or maybe acquire their primary building block. Do you think that they have that guy, or is he still the elusive piece?
Well, we don't know who Joel is. Unfortunately, you're not going to know until next year. So he could be the guy.
Are they banking on him being the guy?
I think they are. Absolutely. Yep. And if he's not, then the answer to your question is no.
Well, then that's why tonight might be so important, because you wonder if that guy does exist in this particular draft at 1, 2, or 3.
Right, or 5 and 6. You know, let's not limit it. As I say, you know, it's kind of unique. It doesn't happen every day. But Steph was taken at number 7, and you know, I mean, he is clearly, well, he's the MVP. So you know, you don't have to say any more than that.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that's something. He was an interesting case because he was a little undersized. They didn't know if he was going to be, you know, what he was going to be. He was a guy who could shoot crazy. He went to a smaller school, you know, Davidson, so it was a kind of a unique.
That's what I wrote, yeah. I mean, all those things go against the grain. But if you know, and the same with when they took Clay, to be honest with you. They took him, I think, at number 11, and there were some question marks about him. But they were definitely identifying that a shooting backcourt was a staple for them. I mean, that's just clear. And so if you can identify what exactly, like, for instance, I mean, I hear the way they describe Moutier. You know, he's a guy who can get to the hole but can't shoot. I mean, you did have that point guard, and you moved him. So if that was the reason, was because he couldn't shoot, then you're banking on developing Moutier's shot just like you thought you would do with Michael Carter-Williams. And if you're not okay with that, then don't take somebody who doesn't fit your criteria. Now, I know I said take the best available, but not if it's not your criteria.
Right, much like Ron Hextall said yesterday, I checked up all the boxes except for one, and that one didn't mean a lot to me. In this instance, if you check off all the boxes and one of them is I can't shoot, you probably would think that one's pretty important if that's something that you already identified as not being important. But I'll ask you, Dee, if they ended up with the number 2 pick, is there somebody that you would identify as a better fit than somebody else?
Well, I mean, obviously, at some point, this. I know it's a point guard league, and people think that point guards are a dime a dozen. But I actually like D'Angelo Russell. I do. Now, I know people love Okafor, but when people talk he cannot guard the pick and roll, and defensively he will be challenged, maybe because you would put him alongside a Nerlens or Joel. Maybe you're okay with that. But this team has definitely said this year, defense matters to us, and putting up the 3 at a high volume also matters to them. So to me, those are the 2 things that we have definitely seen in the first 2 years of this regime that are becoming important to them. So to me, those people, you have to identify people like that. I mean, it's been said a number of times, if you're going to have Joel down there, you better have some shooters to spread the floor around them.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. And to me, you look at the guards, you look at the teams that are still left and the teams that just went out. Kyrie's still playing. Jeff Teague's had a great year. Curry, as you just mentioned. I mean, John Wall, Clay. Yeah, the guards are still supreme in this league.
Chris Paul, bless his soul. I feel bad that they, get bumped, but him too.
Chris Paul, yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, these guys, James Harden. I mean, that's where this is.
No doubt about it. And look, that's why tonight is very interesting to see if they end up with that 1, because then it's like, well, we kind of have to take the best guy. He's a big man. Or 2, now we have couple choices, and who fits us best, because, as you mentioned, Okafor, I think, is a guy that seemed like the guy early in the process but has kind of dipped a little bit, and I think that's what would make our jobs a lot more fun.
Yeah, well, it depends on how you define fun, but thank you.
Dei Lynam over at
makes for a long 32 days, let me tell you.
No doubt. Over at CSN Philly with more on tonight's NBA Draft Lottery. I'm sure you guys will be all over that. It's tonight at 8 o'clock coverage here on 97.3. Thank you, Dee.
Always fun talking to you guys.